I still remember the smell of seawater that night, even though the ocean was more than 10 kilometers away. It clung to the wind like a whisper, like a warning I didn't yet understand. I was 43 then, driving a rust-red Toyota Crown, the kind of taxi you only saw in the provinces, paint-chipped, roof light cracked but still glowing. My shift usually ended at midnight, but the quiet months after the tsunami left me desperate for extra fares. Too many drivers, too few tourists, too many stories no one wanted to tell. Phuket was supposed to be paradise. The brochures showed beaches that looked like paintings, sand too white to be real. But after December 26, 2004, the posters curled on the walls, ignored. Every tourist board photograph felt like a lie. Whole families had been swept away in Khao Lak, resorts flattened, dive boats capsized like toys. Rescue workers spoke of thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and yet the numbers never told the truth. They never told of the slippers left on the sand, the photographs stuck in mud, the phone that rang even though its owner was long gone. And me? I was a driver. I carried people. I didn't think much about the dead. Until the dead wanted a ride. That night began like any other. The air was heavy with the scent of frangipani and gasoline. My wife had scolded me for working so late. She said no one sane would call a taxi after midnight anymore. But I knew better. Hotels were half empty, but someone always needed a ride. And in those days, one good fare might mean dinner for the children. So I drove, down Patong's empty streets where neon signs blinked like half-hearted apologies. Past closed massage shops, plastic chairs stacked in silence. Past the dark shell of a hotel that once charged 5,000 baht a night for a sea view suite. I knew the city too well, and in that silence, the meter ticked, reminding me that time itself had a price. It was almost 1 a.m. when I saw her. She stood on the roadside near Bangla Road, her dress damp as though she'd just walked out of the ocean. Black hair clung to her face, and when she raised her hand, it was more tired than eager, more desperate than casual. I slowed down. My headlights caught her eyes, and something inside me shifted. For a second, I thought she looked familiar, like someone's cousin from the market or maybe a singer I'd seen in a bar. But no, it was something else, something in the way she didn't smile, something in the way her hand trembled as though even raising it had taken effort. "Where to?" I asked as she slid into the back seat. Her voice was barely audible. "Khao Lak." My stomach tightened. Khao Lak. The name itself carried weight then. It wasn't just a beach town anymore. It was a grave. Still, I nodded. "It's late. Expensive." She said nothing, only lowered her head, and when I glanced at the rearview mirror, I saw her fingers gripping the seatbelt like a lifeline. So I started the meter, and we drove. The road out of Patong was unusually dark. Many streetlights hadn't been fixed since the storm. The asphalt gleamed with leftover rain, reflecting my headlights in sharp streaks that looked like open wounds. She didn't speak. The only sound was the hum of the engine, the ticking of the meter, the occasional brush of tires over small stones. I kept glancing into the mirror, waiting for her to ask me to stop at a shop or light a cigarette or do anything that living passengers normally did. But she just sat there, staring out the window. After 15 minutes, the smell started. Not strong, not overwhelming, just faint seawater like dried salt crusted onto skin. I cracked my own window, pretending it was to cool down. I tried to break the silence. "Not many people go to Khao Lak these days," I said. "Too quiet, too sad." She didn't answer. Her face in the mirror was pale, her lips pressed shut. I drove on, past the Lang, past the gas stations that closed early now, past stretches of road where the jungle pressed close. Every kilometer north felt like moving deeper into a memory no one wanted. Around 2 a.m. I pulled into a roadside stall, a shack with a single fluorescent bulb and a sleepy vendor selling instant noodles. I needed coffee to stay awake. I stepped out, stretched, and asked the vendor for a hot cup. While waiting, I looked back at the car. She was still in the back seat, head bowed. When the vendor handed me my cup, he asked, "Long night? Driving alone?" I laughed softly. "Not alone. Passenger to Khao Lak." He frowned, peered at my car, then shook his head. "Brother, your taxi's empty." The steam from the coffee blurred my vision for a second. I turned quickly. My headlights illuminated the interior clearly. She was still there, hands folded, head down. I swallowed hard. "She's tired, doesn't want to be bothered." The vendor shrugged. "Suit yourself." I got back into the car. My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the wheel. She hadn't moved an inch. But when I checked the seat with my eyes, there was no reflection of her in the glass. Just the seat. Empty. Still, when I looked in the mirror, she was there. I drove on. The first sign we had reached Khao Lak was silence. Not the natural quiet of villages, but a deeper, unnatural emptiness. Buildings stood like broken teeth. Resorts that once glittered were reduced to hollow frames, their names erased from billboards, their pools filled with stagnant rainwater. "Stop here," she whispered suddenly. Her voice startled me. I slowed, pulling onto what used to be a driveway. Overgrown grass had reclaimed it. Ahead there was only rubble where a hotel once stood. I knew this place, the Golden Palm Resort. I had driven honeymooners here once. Now there was nothing but cracked tiles, a staircase leading nowhere, and the faint smell of mildew. She lifted her head. Her eyes were filled with something I can't describe. Longing, sorrow, resignation. "I used to stay here." I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened. I turned off the engine and stepped outside. The night air was heavy, the cicadas strangely muted. I walked a few steps toward the ruins. The moonlight revealed fragments, a piece of broken mirror, a child's plastic toy half buried. When I turned back to the car, my heart dropped. The back seat was empty. The door was still closed. The seatbelt she'd gripped hung loose, but the meter was still running. Numbers climbing, charging for a fare that no longer existed. Panic flooded me. I scrambled back into the car, slammed the gear into reverse, and sped back down the ruined road. My hands were cold despite the heat. My breath came sharp and shallow. The whole drive back, I felt her presence. Sometimes I glanced in the mirror and swore I saw the edge of her dress, the glimmer of wet hair. Sometimes I heard the faint sound of dripping, as if seawater pooled on my floor mats. I didn't stop until I reached my home in Phuket town. My wife woke when I stumbled in. She asked what was wrong, why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told her everything. She listened silently, then nodded once. "Others have said the same," she whispered. "The unclaimed souls, they still wander. They don't know they're gone." That week, monks held merit-making ceremonies. They chanted by the beaches, by the mass graves, by the temples crowded with photographs of the missing. Taxi drivers like me left offerings inside our cars. White jasmine garlands, water bottles, sometimes even snacks. Not for the living passengers, but for the ones who might climb in after midnight. From then on, I kept a garland in my taxi. Some nights I drove empty streets and felt a weight in the back seat, lighter than a person but heavier than nothing. I didn't check the mirror anymore. I just whispered a prayer and kept driving. Weeks later, it happened again. I was near Patong when I saw her. Same spot, same damp dress, same tired hand raised into the night air. This time I didn't stop. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator. My headlights passed over her figure, and for a second she turned her face toward me. Her eyes glistened with something that wasn't anger, wasn't malice. It was longing. That night, I dreamed. I was back in my taxi. She sat in the front seat this time, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears, seawater dripping softly onto the floor mat. She turned to me. Her voice was clearer than before, gentle but heavy. "Can you take me home?" I wanted to answer. My mouth opened, but no words came. The steering wheel grew cold in my hands. I woke drenched in sweat. Even now, years later, I drive these roads. Tourists have returned, hotels rebuilt, the beaches glitter again as if nothing ever happened. But when I pass Bangla Road late at night, I can't help glancing toward that corner. Sometimes I swear I see her there, and every time my chest tightens, my hands sweat, and I wonder, what if one night I do stop again? What if I let her in and she finally tells me where home is? Until then, I keep driving. Headlights cutting through humid air, meter ticking, mirror watching, always waiting for the last fare.